Hi, I'm Lesley Greening and I'm bringing you a video today from my Project Management Matters channel just to discuss about setting up a project management environment within an organisation. With some smaller companies, they might not necessarily have a structured project environment. It may be you've never really done projects before, or maybe they have been so small that it hasn't really warranted much thought behind it. But as you start to get bigger projects or more complex projects, then you need to start thinking about having more structure around the processes. The type of governance, what sort of documentation you're going to have. I would say that you have to have a project charter and you have to have a project management plan. And the project charter should include your business case, why you're doing the project, does it align with the organisation goals? The project management plan, how are you going to run this project? Now, depending how big the organisation is, it can just be one piece of paper, one sheet, that's all. If it starts to get more complex, then you need to start thinking about 20 pages, 50 pages. But if you're just starting up a project management environment, then you would probably be just using the smaller documentation. And then what level of authority do you need to have for it? Another thing you have to think about is what type of organisation you've got. Is it going to be projectised, where you have project teams that are dedicated to doing those projects? Are you going to have more of a matrix where you've got project teams that are also working on their functional jobs as well? In which case you need to think about the level of authority between the project manager and your functional manager. So these are sort of things you need to think about. Another thing is with training or familiarisation. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal training for your resources, for your staff. Help guide them from a functional line to a project environment, because it is a really big step. It's a totally different way of thinking. I've been in a couple of different organisations where they just weren't used to looking at things as projects. There was one company where they had a project schedule, and it was a project, but it was the same thing every year. You just had different people involved, but it went on every year. So it was repetitive, but it had a start and a finish. Now, they brought me in because they were just getting in a mess, basically, and they set this Microsoft project schedule up, which didn't really help them. And it was because they were looking at it like they would do setting up a calendar and setting up a timeline, but they hadn't thought about the structure of what they tried to deliver. Once I set the project up for them, where I designed it, where I discussed with them, okay, so this is what the project's all about. Then what steps do you need for each of that? What tasks do you need for each of those deliverables? Then they got to see the design and the structure of the project, and then you set out the timelines, and it made it so much clearer to them. And in the end, they just had to change the date. Every year they just used the template and changed the start date, and everything just flowed out for them. They began to understand the difference between how to work in a project environment than a functional. And also another thing is that you need to involve people at the beginning with how they're involved with each task, because they don't realise the impact maybe that the work they're doing on particular tasks, how that task can impact another task, which, if it's on the critical path, can impact the whole project. They need to be trained into that way of thinking. The same with the confusion of, am I answerable to the project manager? Am I answerable to the functional manager? They need to understand the cut-off and where one takes over from the other, which has precedence. It may be that if there is a conflict of priorities, that then it goes up to the higher management level to make the decision as to where their work needs to be carried out. So it does help with the employees to know where they stand as far as the project goes and the management goes. And another thing is with their time. Now, when you start monitoring projects, you may be monitoring actuals against your budget. Well, if you do that, you may want people to fill in timesheets, and the timesheets they'd log the time against the deliverables or as to the level of tasks. This can be quite disconcerting for people. They might start thinking you are monitoring them. So you have to make it clear to them that it's the task you're monitoring and the project you're monitoring. You know, they could have had a lot of autonomy before, and then they suddenly feel that they're really being watched. So you need to put their mind at rest and let them know that it's just the project you're monitoring, not them. So these are just a few things to be aware of, and also the types of tools you're going to be using. How complex are your projects? Do you just need to use the scheduling facility within Excel, or perhaps you need Microsoft Project to schedule your projects, or one of the other many tools that are out there? Depends what line of business you're in and what project, but these are just the things you need to think of up front. So I hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions, please leave your comments, and I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Thank you.